Far from the deserts of Egypt, beyond the gold of Mali, deep in the heart of southern Africa lies a secret, a city, a kingdom, a memory carved in stone. This is Great Zimbabwe. Its walls rise without mortar, yet have stood for centuries. Its towers stretch to the sky, built by hands that believed stone could speak. But for generations the world asked, who built it? How did it rise? Why was its story hidden, buried, and twisted into lies? To answer, we must journey back more than 1,000 years, before walls and towers, before kings and traders, back to the land itself, to the soil, the rivers, the granite, the ancestors who first walked this earth. The Zimbabwe Plateau, a place where earth and stone meet sky. Rolling grasslands stretch as far as the eye can see. Granite hills, called kopjes, rise like ancient sentinels, their boulders piled high as if placed by the gods themselves. Rivers carve valleys, bringing water to fields and cattle. Long before cities rose, long before kings reigned, this was a land of hunters and gatherers. People followed herds of antelope across plains, foraged roots, fruits, and honey from the bush. The land fed them, the sky sheltered them, the rivers guided them. But change was coming. By the first millennium, great movements of people swept across Africa, migrations of Bantu-speaking communities. They brought new knowledge, the art of farming, the power of cattle, the fire of iron. With them came seeds of millet and sorghum, crops strong enough to withstand the African sun. With them came herds of cattle, symbols of wealth, status, and survival. With them came iron smelting, furnaces that glowed like stars in the night, reshaping the land and the destiny of its people. By the 9th century, small villages dotted the valleys of southern Africa. Round huts with thatched roofs stood in circles. Smoke rose from hearths. Families worked the soil, tended cattle, forged iron tools. They planted millet and sorghum, harvested wild fruits, and exchanged goods with neighboring villages. The land gave strength, the rivers gave life, and the granite hills, standing eternal, gave inspiration. It was here among stone and savanna that the idea of something greater began to form. A settlement not of wood and mud, but of stone. A city that would outlast its builders. A city that would one day be called Great Zimbabwe.
By the 11th century, a transformation began. From the granite hills, the people learned to cut stone. They split massive boulders into smaller blocks, each piece fitted with skill. No mortar, no cement, just patience, precision, and vision. On the high hill that looked over the valley, the first walls rose, curved walls, embracing walls, fortifications that surrounded caves and shrines. This was no ordinary hill. This was the hill complex. Here, rulers lived. Here, rituals were performed in the caves where ancestors were believed to dwell. The hill was fortress and temple, palace and shrine. From this sacred height, the city was born. But stone on the hill was only the beginning. From its slopes, the settlement spread downward into the valley. Families built huts in clusters. Farmers came with their cattle, artisans with their skills, traders with their goods. The city began to grow. Stone walls spread like veins, dividing spaces, defining authority. The hill was the seat of power, but the valley was the lifeblood. What began as a fortress became a town. What began as a town became a city. From the beginning, Great Zimbabwe was more than stone. It was spirit. The Shona people believed the ancestors walked with the living. Every decision, every harvest, every war was tied to ancestral approval. Rulers were not just kings. They were sacred mediators, rainmakers, protectors of fertility, guardians of the bridge between the living and the dead. On the sacred hill, caves echoed with prayers. Ceremonies were held to call down rain. Beer was poured onto the earth as offerings. Drums called the ancestors to witness. Stone walls did not merely protect, they sanctified. They turned the city into a shrine. Every wall, every tower, every enclosure was built, not just with hands of stone, but with the breath of spirit. And among these walls, sacred emblems were carved from soapstone. Birds with curved beaks and watchful eyes, guardians of the city, symbols of the ruler's divine power. These birds would survive the fall of the city. They would survive centuries of silence, and one day, they would rise again on the flag of a new nation. By the 13th century, the city of stone had become something greater. It was no longer only a fortress, no longer only a shrine. Great Zimbabwe had become a kingdom. Its rulers commanded not just the hill, but the valley, not just the valley, but the lands beyond. From cattle to gold, from farmers to artisans, from spirits to kings, all flowed into its walls. The House of Stone had grown into the heart of an empire. In the valley below the hill, thousands of people now lived. Round huts with thatched roofs filled the plains. Each family compound surrounded by low stone walls, marking space and status. Farmers tilled the soil, planting millet and sorghum. Herds of cattle grazed across grasslands, tended by young boys with long sticks and sharp songs. Ironworkers bent over furnaces, pumping bellows, shaping spears, hoes, and ornaments. Women carried water in clay pots, ground grain on stone, and wove baskets to store food. The valley was alive. It was a city of rhythm and order, where every sound, from cattle lowing to hammers striking, was part of a larger harmony. From hill to valley, ruler to tower, stone walls defined life. They separated the sacred from the ordinary, the powerful from the humble, the royal from the people. But they also united. Together, they formed one city, one kingdom, one Zimbabwe. And then came the greatest of all structures, the Great Enclosure, a massive oval of stone, its walls rising over 10 meters high and stretching more than 250 meters around. Built with precision, its stones laid in perfect balance, without a single drop of mortar. The outer wall curves in a gentle sweep, while within it stands a second wall narrower, twisting, enclosing secret passages. And at its heart, a solid cone of stone, rising 11 meters high. Its purpose still a mystery. Was it a symbol of power, a granary for royal tribute, a shrine to the ancestors, or all at once? Whatever its meaning, one truth is clear. The Great Enclosure was more than architecture. It was power, made stone, a message written in granite. Here reigns greatness. To this day, no structure like it exists anywhere else in sub-Saharan Africa. The Great Enclosure was unique. It was monumental. It was unforgettable. But walls alone do not build kingdoms. Wealth does. And at Great Zimbabwe, wealth flowed like a river of gold. The plateau was rich in resources. In the soil, millet and sorghum. In the grasslands, vast herds of cattle. In the rivers and earth, glittering veins of gold. Gold, the metal that would tie Great Zimbabwe to the world beyond Africa. Merchants carried it from mines and rivers to the city. From Zimbabwe it traveled eastward, carried by caravans across land to the Swahili coast. There, in ports like Kilwa and Sofala, it was exchanged for beads, porcelain, silk and cloth. From there it crossed the Indian Ocean to Arabia, Persia, India, and even China. Gold from Great Zimbabwe glittered in the palaces of Arabia, was struck into coins of Arabia and India, and adorned temples in far-off lands. And in return, the city received glass beads from India, Chinese porcelain, Persian fabrics, and Arabic copper. Fragments of these treasures still lie buried in Zimbabwe's soil, proof that this city of stone was connected to the wide world. Great Zimbabwe was no isolated kingdom. It was a node in the great Indian Ocean trade. It stood at the center of Africa's beating heart of commerce, and its kings grew rich, powerful, and unshakable. At the heart of this kingdom stood its rulers, kings, who were not only political leaders, but spiritual guardians. They ruled through cattle, for cattle were wealth, food, and life. They ruled through gold, for gold was power, tribute, and trade. They ruled through stone, for stone walls divided, organized, and sanctified their authority. They were rainmakers, spirit mediators, and guardians of ancestors. Their power was not only seen in the great enclosure, but felt in every corner of the kingdom, from the miners in the fields to the merchants on the coast. All roads of power led to Great Zimbabwe. All tribute flowed to the king, and with power came mystery. With mystery came reverence, and with reverence came legacy. The city of stone was at its height, its walls unbroken, its trade unchallenged, its kings unquestioned. This was the golden age of Great Zimbabwe, an age of glory that would echo for centuries. And so, the city of stone stood at the height of its power, its walls unbroken, its kings revered, its gold flowing across oceans. But every kingdom that rises must one day face the test of time. What happened when the power of Great Zimbabwe was challenged? What forces brought cracks to its mighty walls? And why did a city once filled with life fall silent? That story awaits in the next chapter of Great Zimbabwe, the full story. If you've been moved by this journey, don't forget to like, share, and comment your thoughts. And most of all, subscribe so you don't miss the concluding part of this story. Together, let us bring Africa's heritage back to life.